Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm Amanda. Thank you for being here. So I'll just clear the energy with my selenite stick. And today I am going to be discussing what I've been feeling in the collective field as it pertains in particular to the aftermath of the absolute tragedy and destruction from Hurricane Helene. And as I speak, there is another major hurricane that is approaching Florida, the Gulf of Florida, and so many people are in the path of this one as well. So there is just a lot that people are grappling with right now. And I have been tuning in to what people on the ground have been sharing about their experiences. And it's really quite devastating. And I want to anchor this in also the hope that I have. I just got tingles in my leg. And I just saw 111 on the camera as well, or on the timer. And the silver linings that I have seen and felt from this massive tragedy is humanity coming together to support humanity. And there's a lot that I'm going to get into. And of course, with all of this happening, today also happens to be the anniversary of the attack in Israel, which was another horrific tragedy. I just have 144. I've been seeing 144 constantly the last few days, by the way. So I, again, have hope. I've been editing my book. I have completed one of the major nitty-gritty rounds of edits. And so I've been kind of grappling with the duality of all of the heaviness in the collective, as well as the incredible beauty and possibility that I see for the future. Now, I speak a lot more about the energetics assisting and facilitating our evolution and expansion from more of a spiritual perspective on this channel. I don't get into the kind of depths of the matrixy type stuff, the system and the corruption, but I see that. I see it all. And I sometimes mention it in context, like with the eclipse. The timing of the eclipse and this hurricane, it was impossible to ignore, honestly. But I am going to get a little bit more into the nitty-gritty, and here is why. One of the biggest takeaways that I have felt from this experience is that, actually, before I get into this, I want to just highlight that I have listed underneath this video, I will have listed all of the local organizations to donate to, because I've been speaking with people on the ground. I have friends in the region. I feel a very strong affinity to the region, so this really cut me to my core. I love driving through it. The Blue Ridge Mountains feel on some level like home to me. I just saw 333 on the counter, even though I have never lived there. I've only gone through in passing in majority, but there's always been this affinity, like I said, and I do have friends in the region. Thank goodness they are safe. But what I have been hearing is that, the resources need to be going to the local organizations, not like the Red Cross, not the Humane Society either, local shelters, local on-the-ground organizations like beloved Asheville. And Asheville is actually getting a lot of the resources. So the Mountain Mule Packer something or other, I'm going to list them all down below. But the people who are literally going into the mountains, donating directly to them is the best way to go. And they do need manpower. So I'm going to get into all of this, but I wanted to not get too deep into the video before highlighting that and just saying that I am sending so much love to everybody. But we have to go beyond light and love and prayer. Prayer is powerful, but part of embodiment is speaking up and taking action, whatever action that might look like. If you can donate, if you can spread awareness. I've been posting on my stories on Instagram, for example, and sharing on the other platforms. I just wanted to get more grounded before I came onto YouTube to share a full video, because there is so much distortion in the narrative right now. I'll put it that way. And it's really heartbreaking that that's even happening. So I've been processing a lot of grief and sacred rage and, frustration, all the while having everlasting hope in a more beautiful future. But we have to honor those that have passed, that have lost their lives, and those who have literally lost everything, including family, but have nothing more than the clothes on their back. And one of the heartbreaking things that I've seen is that a lot of these people are being essentially gaslighted, not just by the media, but by people who believe the media and are like, oh, I'm going to fact check that. And I don't want to get too snarky in this video, but that makes me angry, honestly. That's part of the sacred rage that has been kind of bubbling up, and that I've been going out and dancing, to process it through my system. There's been deep tears coming up, grief, pain, all of that, just clearing from my system. And this is what a lot of us do. We alchemize and transmute for not just ourselves, but also the collective. So if you've been experiencing that, and if you just need an ear or something, I am here, and I would love to hear in the comments if anybody has any specific prayers that want to be amplified, or if you have other local organizations that you recommend. Again, I'll put that in the comments and the description below, where to donate, where to send support to. So, again, embodiment is how we become a leader. And what I was starting to say before is that one of the biggest takeaways that I've personally had from a much more zoomed out perspective is that we cannot escape the matrix. What we saw was, whether it was deliberate or a tragic act of nature, well, I'm going to share some other facts down below in this video, further on in this video. But the region that was hit was the mountains, number one. They are not prepared for hurricanes. It's almost unheard of for a hurricane to gain strength when it hits land. I'm not going to say completely unheard of, but I think it's not really a thing that happens in nature. So there's that. But these people were homesteaders. They were living off the grid. They were people who literally lived in communion with the land, salt of the earth. And a lot of them, were of a specific type of people who literally wanted as little to do with society as possible. And this is why I say, so many of us have these visions of building communities and in communion with the land, sustainable, and a lot of us kind of want to escape the matrix in order to do that. The matrix will follow us. It's very clear and evident to me that while some of us are meant to absolutely create these beautiful sanctuaries, and that is a vision of mine too, with its own flavors and nuances, there is still much work to be done within to break the matrix, and escaping it is not the sustainable solution, because there is so much corruption that is happening. And so this is part of shadow work, is facing the shadows of the government. And by bypassing and avoiding the system that is in place and the corruption, we're not actually going to be able to shift things as palpably and to actually create and build heaven on earth. It's one thing to recognize it, but it's another to recognize that we're literally the ones who are here to build. And if we're here to build, we've got to do what we can to work through the system and come out the other side. It's the dark night of the tunnel. This is a spiritual awakening for America. And what happens after an awakening is a dark night of the soul. So many people are at that threshold. Many people are still resisting it. They're in denial, honestly, of the amount of travesty and the amount of deception that is going on from the political talking heads and the higher ups, the ones who are organizing the governmental relief. 1010, it's over. We're about to hit the 1010 portal, and it's coming to a head, and people aren't ready for it. So we're going to see a lot more people be very ungrounded, go through the denial, the grief, the rage, all of the stages of grief, essentially, because that is part of what happens in this awakening. Is there's this grief when you realize everything that you thought you knew was wrong. It's a really tough pill to swallow. The red pill isn't an easy pill, the black pill even harder. But we've also got the gold pill that is anchoring in this higher truth and illuminating the path forward to help us anchor in the faith and the trust that the light has already won. And so we're grappling with the extreme polarities and dualities. I said in a post over the weekend, I just saw 1111 out of the corner of my eye. I feel like I have been dancing the duality at its finest, basically, during this processing as I keep my vision focused on the future, because this is what my book is about. It's about the process of creating heaven on earth, essentially, in a very practical way, as within, so without. We must all walk the path ourselves so that we can come together collectively. And this was one of the silver linings, is seeing humanity step up to help each other, humans helping humans, souls helping souls, to pick up and rescue and bring relief and supplies and solace and comfort. And what I saw, the interference was coming from the system, right? And there's a lot there. There is a lot there, but that was one of the major silver linings. And the second silver lining was that this will wake more people up. Some people are gonna go there kicking and screaming, but it's situations like this that do wake people up. It's through crisis that we wake up. Most of us need that crisis, and this is a collective crisis that is happening as the genocide across the world is ongoing and ramping up. It's really, there's just so much heaviness and devastation across the world, but this is essentially a war zone. That's the level of destruction that we're dealing with in our own home states in the South. So we have the mountains of North Carolina that were hit maybe arguably the absolute hardest, because those small mountain towns, their roads were absolutely taken out, destroyed, homes literally taken off, and the media is not covering it in to the level that it should be given. And the due that it should be given, it is not being seen, I think, by a lot of people. So you've got to go to social media. People have to take to social media to actually see what's going on the ground. And one of the heartbreaking things that I saw was a local who seemed to have their needs met in one of the more established towns, saying, yes, the boots are on the ground here. Don't listen to the people who are saying they're not. And I was like, I am so glad that you have the support that you need and that your community is receiving resources. But what I just thought it was such an honestly narcissistic take that her experience must be that of everybody else, and her local mountain friends, be damned, they're lying. Like, ooh, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. And she was like, it's so disgusting what they're doing. I was like, honey, look in the mirror, my goodness. And so, these are the narratives, and I had to wonder if she was paid off by somebody to say these things, which happens. It does happen, make no mistake, with influencers. So when these divisive issues, and this should never have become a divisive issue. It should never have become a political issue. But now people are fact checking and saying, oh, it's not as bad as they're saying. And yes, the government is there and they're helping and FEMA is sending in the support. Well, on the ground, people are saying, I haven't seen a single person. And we're over a week in now. And they're still not showing up. Who is showing up is the community. And so this is what we have to remember. United we stand. they want us divided so that we fall. And we have so much power in numbers. When we come together, we step up and we help each other. This is unity consciousness in action. And I witnessed this, and I'm going to do maybe a separate reflection video on this, but I went down to an event in DC. I went down into the belly of the beast last weekend, as the hurricane was hitting, and I still didn't know the level of devastation because it wasn't really being reported. But in the audience, people across the political spectrum were there because I was curious. I was getting curious about it because what I see is that politics influences the matrix the most, and this is where the mind control comes from. And this is the matrix that we have to break. It's the mental matrix, and it's the matrix that shuts our hearts down. So who is perpetuating that system primarily is the political beast. So I have taken upon myself to personally kind of go into the depths a little bit more and to focus on that. Not that I didn't see it or do this kind of research in the past. I just didn't really speak into it and immerse myself in it so directly, because there's a lot of energy that comes along with that. But this is how we wake up, is we see the darkness and we have to walk through it, and it's within and without. And by bypassing the shadows, by avoiding the matrix, by avoiding what's going on in the government and all of that and the political stuff, that's not really serving the ultimate expansion of humanity, the ultimate awakening and ascension that is upon us. In my humble opinion, I think that's perpetuating false ascension timelines of, just keep your vibration high. And yes, that's very important, but it's navigating through these places that I think most of the impact will be found. So I'm just going to share a little bit more about the nitty-gritty stuff that I have learned, and more from just like a factual space, and maybe leave things up to interpretation. I have my own opinions, my very strong opinions, but I'm going to share a little bit more. And also this quotation that I found, it's very relevant. The general population doesn't know what's happening, and it doesn't even know that it doesn't know. That's a Noam Chomsky quote. And I feel like that's particularly relevant here. So we are the ones to illuminate truth, and sometimes that has to happen with the sword of truth. And, I said this in my last video, but when it came out, I was like, yes, that's exactly it. Only an ego operating distortion will be hurt by the truth. The truth hurts only if you're operating in distortion. So this is what we've got to do, is we've got to face truth head on, that we've got to actually go through the belly of the beast and face it head on ourselves in order to create heaven on earth. And we all play different roles. Not all of us have to go into the muck directly. I'm not saying you have to speak up directly, but we've got to face it directly, and we've got to do what we can. And perhaps that is spreading awareness to our circles and taking a stand for what we know to be true, and to reflect the amount of corruption and deception that is occurring within the media and the government. And it's basically harkening back to 2020. It's the same cycle repeating over and over. And the lesson is to not let it repeat, to exit the karmic loops. And yes, a lot of this is clearing, and that's exactly what's happening. The shadows are coming to the surface. But for me, I was like, we've got the most advanced military in the world. We have drones that have cameras with heat sensors on them. Why couldn't they send those in on day one, or even day two if it took them another day to mobilize the technology and get it into place, to go into the mountains and find the people who had to flee, and even the ones who had passed? They still might have been able to detect them. These people were stuck in the mountains. It was hard to find them, and the government was nowhere. And even worse, what I heard from reports on the ground, you know, take it as you will, but this is what the actual local people were saying, is that they were turning away assistance from citizens, actively saying, no, we will arrest you if you come in and fly your copters to go into the mountains and try to help. You can't take this truck in there, yada, yada, yada. So that's bad enough. And then on October 4th, just less than a week later, the government announces that they're going to send $175 million overseas for relief for Lebanon. I'm not saying they don't deserve assistance, but we are funding the other side of this quote unquote war, or whatever's going on over there, you know, whatever we're calling it. And now we're sending aid to the other side, while saying we don't have enough resources and couldn't go in immediately to help our own citizens, our own tax-paying citizens. What's going on there? And this isn't just the mountains in, you know, it's also Georgia and South Carolina and Tennessee and Florida that have been hit horrifically by Helene, and there's going to be another one coming through. Florida, they're also saying, FEMA's not there. Where are they? They're not there. They're not showing up. So what is the excuse? Well, remember, this isn't left versus right by any stretch of the imagination. This is a system versus the people, and this is what we have to recognize. United we stand, divided we fall. So we've got to face the truth head on and realize what we're up against, and that if we rise together, there's no way that they can come against us. There's no way. We've already won, but what's the collateral damage going to be going forward? So there were anomalies in the path of the storm, by the way. It kept shifting. That's not natural, is it? But, you know, there's one of the richest lithium deposits in the world right outside of Asheville. This is in Kings Mountain. This is fact. You can fact check all of this. There's a quartz mine nearby with the purest quartz, which is used for technology, specifically AI. I forget the name of the mountain, but that you can look up as well. I should have written it down, but sorry. 3 days before the flood, 3 days, the largest lithium mining company submitted permits for their mine right outside of Asheville. They were given $250 million in grants to help with the construction of the mine. Grants, mind you, when we didn't have enough for the people. FEMA's going to run out of money. You know, that's one of the narratives that we heard. Meanwhile, sending billions overseas and $250 million for the grants. Less than a month before that, good old I don't like to say certain names out loud because I just don't know, acquired 2.2 million shares of stock in that mining company. And, you know, this one I haven't fact checked myself, so go ahead and do it. But the presidential nominee seems her husband has a large stake in said company as well. Makes you think. Residents who oppose the mine now had their homes and properties destroyed. Local residents. So the mud in the water is toxic because bodies are being left. One of the reasons. To decay. The dishonoring of the ones who have passed is one of the things that has gotten me most. Leaving people's loved ones to just, it's like they don't, somebody suggested, and you know, take this with a grain of salt, that they don't want to identify the bodies because if they can't, then they can't pass down the property rights. These families have had these homes for generations in many cases. And, you know, it basically looks and smells like another land grab like we had in Lahaina and like what is going on in the Middle East. And these forest fires, the Canadian one in particular was an obvious one, because here's the other thing. And I had this screenshot that I took of a post. It is no longer in my camera roll. I tried to send it to my friend who lives in Asheville, and Facebook wouldn't let it send. It said this media is not available. And I screenshotted that, and I still have that in my phone. But this is public record. You can go on the websites of these towns, these local communities in North Carolina, and it's right on their own website that just on July 2nd of 2024, Asheville announced these plans for, basically making it into a smart city. And Henderson and Cary had these, they statements on their own websites about becoming smart cities. So from the last couple years. So you can look them up right there. And there's something called eminent domain, Chimney Rock, completely leveled, completely gone, completely destroyed. The downtown is no longer there, literally. It looks like a big chunk of the earth just fell off and it's gone. And the government apparently went in, and this is from a local who messaged somebody who then publicly shared this because the local resident didn't want to be named. The government went in and told the residents that the town was being bulldozed, the bodies and all. Again, this is the horrific level that we're at, and the land was being seized by the federal government. So it's there. It's being said out loud. People aren't making stuff up and putting it out there as conspiracy theory, but it's just not being acknowledged. And it's the willful denial of people to listen to the lived reality of the people on the ground, the ones who have lost everything and the ones whose lives have been destroyed. And they're being gaslit basically by an entire subset, you know the word I'm trying to say, of the population that is saying, oh, well, the government said this. And this is the division that they're trying to sow right before election season. It's so obvious what they're doing, and yet so many people still don't have the eyes to see. And so we can't wake other people up, but what we can do is take a stand for the truth. And, in the meantime, there's mold and bacteria and toxins, and it's just a perfect setup for the government and FEMA to come in and say, oh, this place isn't livable. And, to declare eminent domain, which is the power to take private property for public use. So this is spiritual warfare at its finest. This is a war against the people. And I don't like to get so dark, but I also don't like to avoid the reality that we're confronting. This very much is a spiritual warfare. This very much is a battle of the light versus the dark. And I have dealt with it in my own ways in the energetic realms. It has been a doozy of a journey. And I am very grateful that I have all that I do. And I've gone through cancer, I've lost everything on certain levels, but to lose your entire home, there are videos of people saying they didn't have their ID, they didn't have cash, they didn't have their phone because it all got washed away. And they weren't helping them because they couldn't prove who they were. That's the whole system is set up against these people. Oh, well, the people can come find where we're set up in these towns. Well, no, the people in the mountains can't get to these stations that have been set up far too late. And they don't have access to radio or TV to know where to go to apply for the aid. It's just absurd. They don't have the electricity, they don't have the Wi-Fi, and they're like, oh, well, they can just go online and apply or call, or, the system itself is broken. We see this on every level, but here is a real-time reflection of that. And also, again, the flip side, how humanity comes together and they mobilize quickly to get in there. And who is interfering with that response? It's the bureaucracy. And so this is what we have to recognize, is that if we continue to feed the beast, then they're going to just take over. And they're really doing everything in their power to do so, and they have made a lot of strides to do so. So the task for us is to remember our power and to remember that united we stand. This is literally written into the American Constitution. We are the last stand for this in the world even. So this goes beyond America. And, you know, the battle has just been ramped up. And we win the battle with love. We win the battle by being an embodiment of Christ consciousness, an embodiment of harmony and compassion, but also wielding that sword of truth and standing up for what is right and true. From what I understand, Jesus didn't just sit on the side and, you know, let the corruption in the church at the time, or the synagogues, I suppose it would be. He didn't just abide by it. He didn't let it stand. Wasn't there a passage where he's flipping over tables? There's something called sacred rage, right? And so we transmute that, alchemize it into power, into action, and into speaking up, and into creating the new systems and structures and doing what our soul's calling is telling us to do. It doesn't mean idly sitting in our little corners off in the woods and preaching love and light all the time. You know, actually sometimes I should rephrase that, because sharing the message of love and light is one thing, but there is a distortion in a lot of what I see in the new age when it comes to, oh, just be love and light, don't get involved in all of that. It's low vibrational to talk about this kind of stuff. That's bypassing the vast majority of the time. There is a lot to be said for anchoring in those frequencies through our hearts and our wombs and through our bodies to be that pillar of light 100%. That is the path. But embodiment also means, again, I sound like a broken record, but this is it. This is what we are here to do, is we are here to change. We are here to step up into our power and into our leadership to change the reality that we live in. God will come in and work his ways, but he works through us. We are the vessels, so we have to step up and take the action and not expect a savior to come in. That is the lesson. That is the message. We surrender to God. We walk the way of Christ consciousness, and we take the aligned action to build a more beautiful future. So thank you for being here. If you are still here, I would love to hear in the comments what's been coming up for you during these times, and if you're local, how we can support you first and foremost. And if you have friends and family in the region and you know that these are the places to send support to, please share that in the comments. Please share any prayer requests in the comments. You know, I don't have the biggest reach or channel, but this is what I can do for now. Keep talking, keep sharing, and gonna get my book out there too, because it discusses this whole journey of embodying the light and how to walk the path. So I'm gonna be sharing more about that soon. And I think, and I didn't really have this planned out right, but I think on 10/10 I will host maybe just live here on YouTube. I will host a prayer meditation. I have been going into meditation and into the grid and sending in love to help those souls as well. And so we can come together to do that. These are some of the things that I can do. You can donate as well. So I have done a little bit of that. And again, all of those resources will be down below. So yeah, I will just wrap up by saying thank you for being here, and together we can move forward and move mountains and make miracles happen. Onward and upward in love and light. Thank you so much for being here.